So let's go ahead and figure out how to apply the same styling to the video and the audio tags. So the video will also have a rounded border that's black, and so will the audio image at least. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to take class equals image border, and let's go ahead and put it in the video tag. Put a space in there and save it. Let's do a refresh, and it works. And then I want to style rounded around this image and around these video controls. So we have to find those things in here. So here's the image. So go ahead and put that in. And then we'll do the same thing under source. In the video tag. So we'll put it in the audio tag. So before the word controls, we'll just do this. Okay. So now let's take a look. And we have everything that we wanted to have. So that's one way to do a class selector. We can make other class selectors as well. Let's go back to our home page for a second. So just like we, just like we styled one table using an ID selector, we could do the same thing down here. Why don't we go ahead and style this table just by changing the font, for example, using a class attribute. And I apologize, I keep mixing up the words selector and attribute. I'll try to do a better job. All right, so let's do another class selector. This time let's do table, and that's, we'll call this nature. That'll be the name. And let's go ahead and select a different font. How about my second font? And that's the only thing I want to change here. So this is going to be applied to the whole table. So if I go to my table tag in those files, let's make sure that that works. Oops. So we have to find the right table, and then we can say class equals nature. Go ahead and save it, and let's go ahead and do a refresh. And we have definitely changed using the second font family. And if you want to do the same thing to the page where I don't think we use that anywhere else, so that would just be applied here. So that's your second example of a class selector, and things are going to get a little more complicated when I actually get you ready to use JavaScript and some of these class and ID selectors, but more to come soon. Okay, lastly, I'm going to talk about div tags. The div tag defines a division or a section in an HTML document. The div element is often used as a container for other HTML elements to style them with CSS or to perform certain tasks with JavaScript. Before I go on, I'm gonna just take a minute to work myself backwards and show you an example. So here's my my computer app lab project, and if I go to view page source, here's an example of a div tag. So between the body and way at the bottom, there should be a /body somewhere. Right there. Okay. So I've said that the body of the web page is a major division, and that's called the main. So notice that I've given it a name, ID equals main, so that I'm defining the major section as the entire web page. And now if I go to my styling, I can probably find an ID selector called main. So what am I doing in that styling? I'm creating a margin on the left, a margin on the right, a background color of white, and a font size of 30. So if I take a minute to look, I can see that that's what's going on here. So this is considered the entire body of my web page, sitting right there with the white background. Okay, so a div tag defines a division on the web page. A division is anything on the page that might be considered a major division or section. The wrapper or the main div tag is the div tag that contains all of the major page content, like I just showed you. The purpose of the wrapper or the main div is to constrain the width of the content so it doesn't grow and shrink to fit the browser window. And that's what we did with the margins and the styling. Now, HTML5 is the latest version of HTML. Prior to HTML5, web designers strictly used div tags to define major sections of a website and the ID and class attributes for styling those different sections. So I just showed you that first div tag. And if you look closely, you'll see that I have others in here as well. So if I go down a little bit, I have another div tag here to isolate the drop-down content or what I see when I click a certain drop-down for the first drop-down button called Create Performance Task. So I have a div section there, and I have a div section for each one of the different drop-down menus. Okay, sorry. The designers of HTML5, prior to HTML5, designers strictly used the div tags. But the designers of HTML5 wanted to create new tags, so if you looked at the tag, you would know its purpose or function. That is referred to as semantics. So semantics is the study of the meanings of words and phrases in a language. Semantic elements are elements with a meaning. A semantic element clearly describes its meaning to both the browser and the developer. Now, examples of non-semantic elements would be the div tag. It tells us nothing about its content. But an example of a semantic element would be the table tag or the image tag, because we clearly know what's going on when we look at the tag name. Now, new semantic elements in HTML5. Many websites contain HTML code like div ID nav for navigation or div class equals header. When we're talking about a header, we're talking about this part right here. Or even a footer. An example of a footer would be our district homepage. So when I look at it, I would consider this to be the header. And then if I go to the bottom, I would consider the stuff down here to be the footer. With that being said, HTML5 offers new semantic elements to define different parts of a web page. So if I scroll down to the bottom, here are the major sections of an HTML5 web page. So instead of saying like div ID equals header and div ID nav and div ID footer, HTML5 has actually come up with special tags like the header tag, the nav tag for navigation, and the footer tag. In this section, they're showing 3 different main content areas, but I would just call that the section tag. Okay, more to come with div and setting up your web page with sections tomorrow.